It is October 28th, 2021. This is the Daily Rob, and I know you're going to like this video. You're going to subscribe to the channel. You're going to leave us a nice comment, and then you're going to share this out to all your friends. And just so you know, if you don't even like looking at us, you can always listen to us on all major podcast platforms. Now, without further ado, the man, the myth, the legend, the one and only Rob Smith.
That no bastard ever won war by dying for his country. He won it by making the other poor dumb bastard die for his country. And all this stuff you've heard about America not wanting to fight, wanting to stay out of the war, there's a lot of horse dung. Americans traditionally love to fight. All real Americans love the sting of battle.
We always love to hear the words of George S. Patton.
Did you ever hear the story about your grandfather and George S. Patton?
I have, but I'd love to hear it again.
Okay, well, Pop was an officer. He was in the army in Germany. The Krauts were surrendering all over the place. He was on a 50 caliber machine gun with 3 or 4 other guys, and he said they must have had 5,000 prisoners. Patton drives up in his Jeep with his aide. Patton jumps out and he says, "Oh, Tonk." And all the Germans within earshot get up, stand up at attention, except for one. Patton tells his aide to shoot the son of a bitch. And his aide had the good sense not to do that. Pop never liked Patton because of that. He said they all would have been killed had he done that. But just an interesting vignette, Stu, and that things aren't always the way that Hollywood portrays them. And that's why we students of history look at all the nuances to understand a man's character and the events going on in his time. Wouldn't you agree?
I most certainly would agree.
Good. All right, Stu. Well, I have a few things to talk about real quick. One, Merrick Garland testified in front of the Senate yesterday, and he got grilled. But apparently last night there was a big school board meeting in Fairfax County. They too are upset about these transgenders in the bathrooms and CRT and things like that. And there are many reports from parents who went there that they think the Justice Department and the FBI were trying to intimidate them from speaking. Apparently there was a helicopter flying above, shining the spotlight on people as they walked in. There were lots of federal cars there. And I just think it's very totalitarian, Stu, very dangerous if it's true. So again, I don't know all the facts, but pretty scary.
Did you see the report that for parents to see the curriculum at the school, they had to sign an NDA?
I did see that. For those that don't know what that is, that's a non-disclosure agreement. So if your school tries to teach your child communism and to hate themselves and their race, then you can't tell anybody about it. Nice.
Unless you broke the NDA, do you think there is an imbalance of power between a school system and a parent?
Yes, Stu, and I don't know why we need these school systems. No, if this was organic, there wouldn't be a school system in the country that would even think of CRT. It wouldn't even be in their lexicon. It's being pushed from the top down onto people, and they don't have any say. And that's what's wrong with the whole thing.
It's these academic elites who can't compete in the marketplace that have these positions and these cushy jobs, and how they have trickled it down to the public school system.
They're haughty, Stu, and they look down upon all of us. They think we are rubes. I won't go into this very long, but I've had some experiences with academia where I went to seek their counsel in legal cases and experts. And these are guys who are in the paper, they've written books. They're dumb as shit. They don't know. I mean, I was just shocked. This one, I had a free speech case in front of the Supreme Court once, and I didn't know anything about it until about a week before I had to write my brief. Went and talked to a law school professor who's like a big shot. I knew more about the law on this issue than he did. I mean, it was shocking to me. They work from about 10 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon and drink a lot of coffee, but yet they think they're tough stuff. Another story, Stu, and let me just say, I'm not one to tell other people what to do if they're involved in a private organization. You join this group, you govern it, okay? I'm not a Catholic, okay? So, whatever the Pope does, it's really none of my business. But I would like to say for all my Catholic friends, y'all might want to look into this guy. He is a raging, ignorant communist. And he basically said capitalism causes starvation. Yeah. That's about 180 degrees the antithesis of the truth, and it's shocking that anybody could even say that. Number 3, Stu, and again, the news we put out is just weeks and months ahead of everyone else. But again, another country that actually doesn't fudge its numbers, Sweden, 70% of everyone who's been, 70% of all the deaths in Sweden are those who have been fully vaccinated, which means probably even higher than vaccinated. In Maryland, their equivalent of CDC czar who advises Governor Hogan, he was on the news last night, said 40% of all deaths are COVID, are people who have been fully vaccinated. And Stu, that number is going to grow. We've discussed this. The vaccine, it weakens almost immediately, and then it makes a human being susceptible to the variant. And that's what's happening today. Vaccine, the virus got to do what the virus has to do, and the vaccine makes it worse after a period of time. Let's see, Stu. Speaking of this situation, did you ever read the McCullough book on atoms?
I have not.
By the way, did you know that Abigail was a Smith?
I know that.
Well, obviously she was smart. She inoculated all of her children. And what that is, basically, is you take a little bit of the virus and you cut open a portion of the flesh, you put the pus in there, and it gives the children the virus, but in a small amount, and it enhances your immune system to fight it. And I think sometimes we could learn something from the past. I think that's all I got, Stan.
Right on. Well,
I have one more 15-second story. The government of Los Angeles, which controls the ports, the Los Angeles port, not the Long Beach port, has decided that they're going to get involved and help this supply line situation. They are going to fine the shipping companies $100 a day a container for not unloading the container. This is the way the mind of the left works. We can just mandate things and it works. Well, Do you not think that those people operating those ships want to get their goddamn containers off the ship and out into the marketplace to begin with? It's their own fault that they're not being able to do so because of the inefficiency of government and the unions. They have fucked everything up, but yet they want to cast the blame over here, and all they're going to do is make the situation worse. Sorry, Stu, that took more than 15 seconds.
You're good. No, that's
The idiocy is just, it's mind-boggling.
That's a great layup for me. I went to Lidl today to pick up some groceries, and I took some pictures. The store is essentially almost empty.
Really?
Yes, it was frightening to see. And so I forgot who mentioned it, some personality that I like, but they had said a few days ago, now you're going to understand why your grandma washed her aluminum foil.
I remember reading that.
So,
and the social media platform said that didn't happen.
fuck them. I swear to God.
I mean,
They know everyone's grandma. Get out of here.
Yeah. But yeah, people did do things like that. They kept safety pins and everything. They didn't throw anything away. Anyway, sorry, Stu.
No, you're good. And I kind of reflect back on those first few weeks of early COVID where we had some supply line disruptions, but it got back on track. The toilet paper came back and some of the groceries that I wasn't seeing came back. But, you know, this time it's just a complete clusterfuck. And so I'll include those pictures.
Read my article on Real Clear Markets, and you can see why it's such a clusterfuck.
Absolutely.
How idiots could not have foreseen this. I mean, it's just incredible. Our governing class are a bunch of vacuous idiots who have never done anything productive in the private sector.
So I am keeping an eye on a few things, still looking at the trajectory of Joe Biden. Is he being set up to be a fall guy? A lot of things are not going his way right now.
Speaking of being a fall guy, he fell last night at the McAuliffe Rifle.
Oh, did he? I didn't know that.
Yeah, they caught him, but anyway.
It's interesting when you see the Wall Street Journal, when you see the Associated Press start to fact check him. And so they're fact checking this Amtrak story from a week ago that he has repeated many times, and something that conservative media fact checked the moment he said it on the campaign trail. So
just like the story about the truck driver who he said was drunk, who killed his first wife. It's just completely not true.
Or corn pop, you know, I mean, how many fake stories does this man have? So
he does have blonde hair on his legs. He turns blonder in the summertime.
Yes.
And the kids in the pool were rubbing his blonde hair. It's creepy shit.
So I'm keeping an eye on that, just kind of this, what we call the mono thought. I think they're slowly trying to shift things around. I saw some fluff piece about how the SNL doesn't know what to do with Joe Biden just yet. And it was complete propaganda from beginning to end. And as we kind of move towards geopolitics, Mark Warner from the great state of Virginia, he is asking that we waive some sanctions on India. Now, Rob, what are your thoughts on Mark Warner?
I think he's just a little Weasley guy. He probably didn't ever have any dates in high school. I think when he was in junior high, he probably had one of those pocket protectors and ink stains on his shirt. I used to see him around Richmond with his entourage of nerds that would go around in a black SUV.
I think I'd probably grossed out a lot of folks.
Today, I heard that he has, he's supposed to be this great businessman, But what he actually did to make his money was he was inside the government and knew about the licenses from the telecom industry that would be available, and he bought a few for nothing. And of course, they were sold for millions. Today, Stu, he has endorsed this idea of taxing appreciated assets. You buy a stock for $1 in 1960, in 2021, it's worth $100. He wants to tax you for that, even though you haven't sold it and had a realization of that. It is just unbelievable that anybody would support something like that. All that is just grabbing your wealth. It's a deprivation of property.
And then you're penalizing people for giving startup.
Yeah.
God. Anyway, so Mark Warner, who is part of the Senate's India caucus, he is saying we should waive these sanctions on India because they purchased some missile defense system from Russia. Now, the reason why we would sanction them is because we have these harsh sanctions on Russia because, they're so evil, they're so bad, they hack our elections, they do all these naughty things. So we have to, have mean sanctions on them, even though they're essentially one step away from being a third world country. But the interesting thing is we did sanction Turkey when they bought the exact same missile system from Russia in 2019. Now, I'm seeing kind of two trajectories from this story. Trajectory one is India can say this because, well, the United States, you destabilize the entire region with Afghanistan. We need to have this for our own protection. And then the second thing is that they're part of the Quad. So these are going to be countries in the Pacific that have some concerns about China. And so that's going to be Japan, Australia, India, and the United States. So we do have a reasonable alliance with India over Chinese aggression in multiple forms.
Well, the dynamic in that part of the world certainly has changed with Joe Biden. Afghanistan debacle one, but even before Biden came into office, we kind of muffed our foreign policy with Turkey, who traditionally had been a great ally of ours. We have to remember the real politic side of things. And the reason we have allies is to protect our vital interests and not over some feel-good kumbaya stuff. It's the way the world works.
And then just one other piece on India right now. Modi, the prime minister, he's being investigated. He apparently has some Israeli purchased spyware system that he was using to investigate his political opponents and journalists. So that's going on in their courts right now. So
I wonder if he got the tip from James Comey on how to do that.
Who knows? But it definitely sounds like India has lots of high-tech toys that they are playing with nowadays. And
they're nuclear power.
Yeah, most definitely.
It was Pakistan.
And I want to end on a happy note today. When we saw the pandemic first hit, we saw all these feel-good stories like dolphins swimming in the San Francisco Bay, how the air pollution was going down. Nature was healing itself. And I saw a story today that warmed my heart about nature healing itself. So it looks like Anthony Weiner and Huma Abdeen are getting back together again.
Oh, really?
They were photographed together. And this has been something that there's been a little bit of a trend of. And they do have a child together. So there is the piece of me that seriously likes that they can be seen together doing things because they do have a child together. I think that's important for that child, regardless of that child's parents being two very scummy politicians.
Huma has always liked the Wieners.
Well, it's interesting that she's back with Anthony Weiner because yesterday she came forward with the press saying that in her new book that's coming out, that she was assaulted by a U.S. senator that she has not named. And that the Brett Kavanaugh.
And here she all of a sudden is going to name him.
Well, it must be a Democrat, because if it was a Republican, it would have been named. But
all of this stuff is always strategic. There's always a reason for either fabricating the story or outing the story at a particular time in order to hurt someone and gain some sort of function for yourself. Those Wieners in Washington don't scare me, Stu. I got them figured out.
So another interesting tidbit is that she said the whole Brett Kavanaugh hearing was the thing that made her remember that this even happened.
Oh, yes.
She said she had blocked it out. But
that's what Blasey Ford said.
It was Blasey
Ford that taught a class at her commie college on repressed memory.
Yeah. So a bit of me is wondering if she's only saying that, you know, ideally, in my perfect world, you don't even say anything like that unless you are telling the truth. But we have seen some very nasty cases where people have had their lives ruined because people claimed that they were assaulted when they weren't. There was that great up-and-coming football player from that high school who got accused, and then his entire life just gets detonated over false allegations. But I digress. But I do think a bit of this is to keep that narrative of, you know, Brett Kavanaugh is a rapist alive when there is almost zero evidence to justify that being any shred of reality.
Yes, David, as we spoke about yesterday, the left lies because the left has no conscience, because the left does not believe in a higher power. They're demonic idiots, and the ends justify the means.
But nature is healing itself.
Well, that's good, Stu.
So what are the words of wisdom for today?
The words for wisdom today, Stu, come from an American, a humorist, a lecturer, a columnist, and actor, born in 1879, world renowned at the time, and during his career, died in an airplane crash in 1936 or 7 or something like that. Way before his prime. Will Rogers. Good judgment comes from experience, and a lot of that comes from bad judgment. What the country needs is dirtier fingernails and cleaner minds. I'll have to agree with that still. Be a politician. No training is necessary. It is awful hard to get people interested in corruption unless they can get some of it for themselves. There's no way in the world you're going to make a political party respectable unless you keep it out of office. Interesting man, interesting time.
Very wise words. I'd never heard that before. That was great.
Well, thank you, Stu. As you know, I'm an extremely well-rounded person.
Your library is extensive, takes up multiple floors. Right on. Well, I'll catch you later.
Go get him, Stu.
Yeah.
Amo, you magnificent bastard, I read your book!